Welcome to Agentic Pathcast. In today's episode, I'd like to discuss SAP transformations. SAP transformations are some of the most complex initiatives a business can take on. For many leaders, it's a once-in-a-career journey full of risk, but also a real opportunity to reimagine how the business runs. In today's episode, we're going to unpack how automation and AI can help de-risk and accelerate that journey. I'm Nick Kabanov, Solution Architect here at UiPath, and I'm joined by Mark Darbyshire, Go-to-Market Strategic Partnerships Leader at UiPath. Mark, maybe you could start by telling us a bit more about yourself and your role.
Absolutely. And Nick, thanks for inviting me today. So the go-to-market and our strategic partnerships is about how we, as a business scale, we have our direct sales model, but also we can reach a much broader and some often deeper and harder to get to set of customers and opportunities through our strategic partnerships. Now, to date, we have several strategic partnerships. I think a lot of people have seen and are seeing what we're doing with Microsoft around automation, around agentic AI and things like that. But we also very much have a similar, if not stronger in some regards, partnership with SAP. So we've been an SAP endorsed app. So we've been on the SAP store since about 2023. Last year, we became an SAP Solex, and SAP Solex is a way of saying that we are an SAP solution extension. And what that means to normal people in English means that we are, to all intents and purposes, an SAP product. So SAP can sell us, SAP can support that, SAP can have their own go-to-markets around the UiPath technology. And what me and a couple of my colleagues do is we support that. We support that, in market units, in region. We support that with events. We support that with content. We support that with thought leadership pieces. And obviously we support sales cycles. So it's very important that we're not pontificating from an ivory tower. It's very important that we get engaged, we understand what customers see as valuable and what customers see maybe as less valuable or as confusing, and we help them get through that and understand the value of all of the aspects of Solex and all of the aspects of UiPath. Our relationship with SAP is quite long. We've been an SAP Silver partner since 2019, and since then we've become certified on a variety of SAP platforms. So NetWeaver for some of the older viewers, various flavors of S4 HANA, SuccessFactors, Ariba, and so on. So we are comfortable and confident that we can interact, integrate, interconnect, automate pretty much anything that goes on within an SAP application and more broadly. But obviously then it takes people to come and help explain that to customers and help customers see where the value is and maybe where they should start. So that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis. Joined UiPath a couple of years back. Previous to that, I'd done just shy of 10 years at SAP. So I'd had global and regional roles and even market unit roles in the UK, part of our SAP's platform and technology team, as it was then called. And part of my role, 2018, 2019, was the phase zero, the discovery part of an SAP migration journey. So I have a relatively long history in this. And previous to SAP, I'd worked for an integration vendor. So I'd been the CTO, the European CTO at TIBCO and things like that. So it's a very interesting space, this middleware connectivity. I like how automation covers many of the things that you might do with integration or with BPM, but also covers things that you can't do with those things. It recognizes the value and the importance of people and of documents, not just of systems and connectivity. So I really like the positioning of automation, because it's not then about solving the technical problem. It's about also providing a business outcome. I'm automating your business as opposed to I'm integrating your applications. I'd much rather be automating your business. So for me, a lot of this resonates and make a lot of sense. For me, UiPath is a bit of a natural home. So yeah, happy to be here.
That's great to hear that. And Mark, given your expertise on the topic, I'm speaking to a lot of customers and hearing from them the challenges of SAP transformation. SAP transformation, often described as some of the most complex initiative an enterprise can undertake. From your perspective, what are the biggest risks executives should be aware of, and how can agentic automation, intelligent automation, play a role in reducing that risk?
Totally understand. I think for a lot of people, the risk is it's not something you're going to do very often. It might be something you only do once in your career. And obviously that has its own complications. But for many people, there's a lot of unknowns. The journey is unknown, and the outcomes as a result of an unknown journey are naturally going to be unknown. So I think it's behoven on organizations to try and work backwards. Where do I want my business to be? What do I want my organization to look like? What do I want my processes to look like? And maybe to some extent work backwards from there. I see a lot of people talk about technical debt and process debt. I see a lot of people talking about code remediation and discovery workshops. And I see people talking about data migration. So there's this kind of world of myths that also potentially get built up around maybe some of the technical aspects of an SAP business transformation that make it difficult for the C-suite to really grasp the opportunity. And I think the opportunity is pretty simple. Here's an opportunity to reimagine some of your core processes and the things that either run your business or cost your business, and make them operate in a way that's best for you, but at a price point that's also best for you. So that I think instead of asking yourself, what should my process look like? You should really be asking yourself, what sort of optimization do I want? Do I want to optimize for cost and just take the standard? Do I want to optimize for differentiation? Do I want to optimize for flexibility? Because I know that I might have a process operating across a lot of different legal terrains, and I might recognize that, it's going into countries where the law is likely to change and supply chains are likely to change. So, what sort of process do I want, and what sort of flexibilities do I want? I think what people should be asking themselves, and then, work backwards from there. If you look at more of the IT aspect, shall we say, of a business transformation, there's a lot of focus on cleaning up data and migrating data and addressing custom code. I find that UiPath is almost uniquely positioned as an automation vendor that talks about this and demonstrates this. I don't see many of the other people that people might consider to be in our peer group talking about this. And that's not to say that, maybe we can uniquely do it. I think, when it comes to automating a migration, having the proximity to the SAP landscape is very important. So with SAP Solex and things like that, we have that proximity. But I think it's also about making sure that if you're going to invest in technology to help you with your migration, wouldn't it be good if you could then reuse that technology once you've done the migration? If I look at pretty much every piece of tool that an organization might use within a migration, they're going to throw that tool away at the end of the migration. That you can have ideas about, continuous improvement and continuous migration and stuff like that. And some people might do that, but I think the mass majority will be like, right, we've done the migration. I never want to look at that again. Throw all of that stuff away. Now, if I can reuse that investment in technology, then that's a great position to be in. If that technology is already pre-integrated and intimately aware of my SAP landscape, my S4 systems, my SuccessFactors systems, and so on, great. And so you get that with UiPath. So when it then comes to, applying things like an agentic or an AI or an intelligent automation layer on top of that, I'm going to argue don't use agentic AI for the deep connectivity into the applications. Politely, that's deterministic, and I would like that to remain deterministic. And I'm going to use good old fashioned automation for that. But when it comes to making smart decisions on top of that, that's where I think the role of AI comes in. And so, you end up with the classic, slightly jaded view maybe of, let automation be the arms and legs because it's good at being the arms and legs, and let the agentic AI be the brains and let it make the decisions. Taking any other approach, you can take other approaches, but you're likely to incur significant cost. Why should I, spend 3 weeks and several million tokens to get my AI to understand my SAP connectivity when I have it out of the box here as part of my automation toolkit? Get on with it. Get on with the connectivity. Put the brains where the brains needs to be. So for me, in a nutshell, use automation to accelerate, de-risk, and simplify your migration. Leave that automation capability in place and then start to layer intelligence and agentic on top as you've moved to your target landscape, but then want to use the power of AI to get as much value, business value, out of that target landscape as possible. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Absolutely. I think you touch a very important point of what goes beyond the migration. What can we do with the farm of robots that we already created to do some work? I wanted to ask you, focusing on migration, about the challenges of speed and quality. So I think, based on the discussion that we had, with C-level leaders, they often quote between the need for speed and SAP migration and the need for quality and compliance. So
Mhm.
how do you see automation, particularly in areas like testing and change management, helping to strike that balance?
Well, I mean, obviously, a very short answer to your question would be to say, if you want both speed and quality, please take advantage of automation. Yeah. So, a robot or a digital worker, if you want to look at it that way, is always going to be able to do the activity faster than the human, and they're going to make fewer mistakes than the human. And for me, it's not just the speed with which you can click through the keyboard, it's the likelihood that you're not going to make a mistake during this slightly painful digital data transformation that we're doing today, or data migration that we're doing today. So it's actually, for me, it's the error rate going down that's probably more important than I can now, do 1,000 clicks a second. And I think the other thing that's really important is you can start to move away from key parts of your migration becoming events in themselves. So right now, in most organizations, the data migration is a big event in itself. We are finally going to get the data for, customers and vendors into production. Woohoo! Finally. That shouldn't be such a big thing. It should be, yeah, we did it last night. We did it 4 times this morning. We're going to try it again tonight. We've adjusted the migration logic. I want it to almost be like it's a no-brainer, so that it's something we just do almost regularly. And that way I want to de-risk it and also take the psychological risk out of it to some extent. If this becomes just something we can just do whenever we feel like it almost, then it feels less risky and less anxiety inducing for the organization as a whole. And that's really where I think we should be able to get to. We should be able to capture big chunks of the migration, automate them, and then say, there's my data migration automation. I might want to adjust it. I might want to apply it, learn from some mistakes, improve it, but don't make migration such a manual effort. Don't make it so dependent on having key resources available. Try and encode as much of the knowledge from the SMEs into the automation that you capture. Yeah, so I think that's a good way of addressing speed, but also by addressing the error rate and refining the automations for those various parts of migration, I can improve the quality of that migration step. I don't have to do it once and panic. I can do it lots and lots of times and improve it. And of course, underlying all of this is testing. I want to test the outcomes of my migration steps. I probably also want to test the migration steps themselves, on test data, pre-production data, and so on, and test scenarios and pre-production scenarios and so on. But also then when I get that part of my migration into my B landscape, I probably also want to test my end-to-end processes. Do I still generate the same profit margins? Do I still have the same, financial outcomes that I had before? So I think there's a huge role there for testing at pretty much every stage of the migration. When I'm preparing to do the migration, doing the migration, testing it and ensuring that it's production ready. Think throughout. And obviously change management has a huge role within all of that, of course. So I think that really nice combination of having a testing capability built into our automation capability, that ability to almost out of the box test your automations, that's very powerful and unique. And I don't see that from a lot of the rhetoric from a lot of the other vendors in the space. People focus on, functionally we do this. Oh yeah, we work with others, but functionally we do this. At no point do they talk about the whole life cycle. And I think being able to talk about that whole life cycle, which means testing in those non-production environments, I think that puts us in a very nice, strong position.
Really agree with you. I think there's a beautiful synergy between the automation part and actually the test automation part. Companies that are under this migration project or planning it, I can see that they already have in plan to hire a lot of maybe different companies, outsource manual testers to do that part. While we already know that, automation helps us in our day-to-day routine mundane tasks, and it can definitely help us in this regard. And I think the beauty of it, coming back to the question of quality and speed, there's this triangle where the quality, speed, and resources, meaning basically money. If you choose 2 out of 3 of those in the triangle and you want to improve the quality
Yeah,
and
it's
improve
fast
the speed, it's going to cost a
pick
lot of
anything.
resources.
Yeah, totally understand. And I think 2 things. One is, we can use the automations as a way of encoding quality. Yeah. So don't get Nick and Mark to do a data migration. Get the world's expert on data migration and capture that as an
Yeah.
automation. Now we've got the best version. I think also that the notion that you'll do testing, you'll get into production, and that's the end of the story. Yeah, okay, you can do that, but it's a bit of a shortfall. What you should be thinking about is going, okay, I've got it into production. I've now got the opportunity to take those test automations and have them live with production. So to
Mhm.
some extent, so that whenever any changes occur in production, the cost of consuming that change into production is minimized. I'm sure you've had these conversations with customers where they've said, that's great, I want that new feature, but to put that into production, that's going to take me 6, 12, 18 months of testing. And you kind of sit there and go, it shouldn't.
Mm.
We shouldn't even be in this conversation. The testing should be, it should be quick. And also the testing should be automated. And so when we get to a production change scenario, shouldn't be having this conversation where, oh gosh, the time and effort to do testing, that's going to stop us from moving forward. And that then becomes the blocker to that organization's innovation.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's just, no, we cannot move forward. We have reached production. Look at the date, 1st of September 2020. We will never move forward from this because you've got this huge cost blocker of we're going to have to test that. So having those test automations in place from your migration and from maybe some of your other, end-to-end process and functional work, that allows you to confidently keep adapting and evolving your production landscape. And that's how innovation occurs. If you're not evolving your production landscape, you don't have innovation. You just can talk about innovation. So I think that's really that, and for me, that's really where our test platform really comes into its own. And having that aligned to all of the functional automations and extensions that you might want to do, same technology, easier learning curve, etc., for me is a bit of a no-brainer. So the two go hand in hand. That doesn't mean that we can't work with other technologies. We can always work with other technologies, but it's always going to be smoothest, quickest, best. If we're reusing our own capabilities in those scenarios.
Absolutely. I think it's a brilliant idea of solving the challenge of this triangle where you still have the quality, you still have the speed, and then you're reducing the amount of resources that you need because you're also investing in the future in a beautiful, brilliant future where the value goes just beyond the migration.
It's almost like the triangle should get smaller as you come out of the page, and coming out of the page with more automation. So as I automate, my triangle should get smaller and smaller, yeah, because it shouldn't be a bigger step between these three potentially, contradictory goals. Absolutely.
That is a great explanation for that. For many organizations, they see SAP migration as a kind of like necessary IT project that we need to undergo. What are the strategic opportunities for executives to go just beyond moving system? You already touched that, but I wanted to ask you if you
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
have some specific use cases that you can share. We
But for me, this is always an opportunity to, should we say, right size your end-to-end processes. So I don't know, organization X has been doing order to cash across their 3 ECC systems for the last 20 years. And, nothing, nothing bad has really happened and profitability is good and what have you. Okay. But could things be better? You know, is there a correlation between process failure and support calls and things like that? So, can we identify things that we measure that could either make profitability better, customer acquisition lower, or just overall improve the operational cost of doing order to cash? Obviously, the answer is yes. And if I can weave that thinking into my F4 journey, then I can make sure that my SAP foundation that will provide, the transactional processing of my order to cash orders, is that as efficient as possible? And is that connected to everything that it needs to be connected to in order to act as efficiently as possible? Let's say efficiency is my goal. And some of that's the happy path. Am I integrated with my warehouses, whether they're mine or third parties? Where do orders actually come and where do I capture orders before they go into my SAP system? All of that stuff. Great. But also there's things that we need to look at around, well, actually, if I've got an order over a certain amount, I need to report to a tax authority. Or if I've got an order from a customer I've never seen before and it's above a certain amount, do I really want to take it on without having done a background check on those customers? So, those kind of scenarios, I can take a happy path or a bare bones process and start to embellish it so that I can make it as efficient as possible for happy day and also maybe less happy day flows. Yeah. A broken process or incomplete data or a bad counterparty or whatever it is. And I think that's where it starts to become a lot more interesting to the C-suite. Can I make my processes the best that they can be? Not in terms of shininess. I don't need Ferraris to go to the shops, but in terms of what is the appropriate optimization for this process for my business? For procurement, it might just be take cost out. For order to cash, it might be customer retention. For hire to retire, it might be employee attrition. How else can I address these things without actually having properly working processes underneath? I mean, when I joined UiPath, it was quite quick and painless, but it is possible to join an organization and sit there for a couple of weeks waiting for everything to come together and, can you please come in tomorrow with your passport and all of those things that show manual, clunky, unintegrated processes. That doesn't need to be happening in 2025 and 2026. So I think there's a huge opportunity for the business suite to actually optimize their processes in the ways that are right for them.
Brilliant. Mark, this has been a really insightful conversation. If you could leave C-level leaders with one piece of advice as they think about the SAP journey, what would it be?
I think one piece of advice would be automate early and hard or profoundly in your SAP migration because it will help your business subsequently and it will help the migration. So migrate fast, lower risk, but also get to a place where the business is a lot more comfortable with automation throughout the business.
Dr. Mark Darbyshire, thank you so much for joining me today.
Dr. Nick, thanks for your time as well. Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. And to our listeners, if you're leading or planning an SAP transformation, I hope today's discussion gave you new perspectives on how automation can help you not just migrate, but innovate. Until next time.